Hello Bookish friends, welcome to my August wrap-up part 1. In this video I will talk about the 6 works that I finished and 1 work that I DNF'd in the first 14 days of August. Like I did in my previous wrap-ups, I will insert the clips that I recorded very soon after I finish those works. Today is the 4th of August and I finished 2 books back to back yesterday. The first work that I finished was the novella that I was reading for the first week of Garbaugust. And the prompt was to read a category romance. I read Innocent in the Harem by Willingham. I actually chose this novella because it took place in my country in the Ottoman Empire times. And I will do a dedicated Turkish shelf video about this very interesting novella. In this novella, we follow the daughter of the chief of the Baldwin tribe. After her parents are murdered, she is taken as a prisoner and then she is brought to be sold as a slave. When priest Cain, the fictional son of an actual historical figure, Sultan Süleyman, sees the girl and finds her very interesting because it seems like that she has a way with wild horses as well as a very unconventional beauty. Cain decides to buy her, bring her to the harem in the Topkapı Palace, the main palace in the Ottoman Empire. I actually like this novella much more than I thought I would. It had a middle degree of sexiness. It was not an erotica like I feared that it would be. So it would be a bit easier for me to do a Turkish shelf video and analyze the concept according to the truthfulness of our culture. And also as a romance novella, it was one of the better ones that I read because it had to be instant love. I rarely connect with the relationship of the characters. I didn't fully connect with this couple, but I could believe that she could fall in love with this prince, and the prince could be intrigued by this very different girl. So as a summary, it was just middle of the road read for me, and I gave Innocent in the Harem by Willingham a 6 out of 10. And the second book that I finished was the book that I chose for my real life book club, which was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Kawaguchi. This book consisted of interconnected short stories that is taking place in a cafe in Japan, in which it is possible to time travel. We follow 4 time travelers. A young woman who gets separated from her lover because of business, a wife with a husband with an early Alzheimer's, the owner of the neighbor pub, and lastly the wife of the manager of the cafe. I've heard very mixed things about this book, and some people really did love stories, whereas some of my friends did find it a bit cliche. I think I agree with both sides, especially the second and the fourth story was very emotional. I sort of teared up a bit when I was listening to the audiobook. I also really liked the rule in the book in which whatever they do in the past or in the future, the present timeline would not change. And that was a different concept from all of the time travel books and time travel movies. However, I also agree with the fact that some of the plot points were really cliche. Also, some plot points were repeated so much. I sometimes felt like I already know this. Why are you telling this to us again and again? Since as a reader, we are reading the whole book, not the individual stories. I will read the second book in the series and decide if I want to continue with the series or not. So in summary, I gave Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. A 7 out of 10. Today is the 9th of August, and I DNF'd one book yesterday evening and finished one book today. The book that I DNF'd was the book that I took out from the library, an Italian book. I tried to read the Turkish edition, which was Baykuşun Günü by Leonardo Sciascia. This was a war crime book. And it is said to be one of the first book which talked about the mafia in Sicily. The premise of the book sounded interesting. However, maybe it was because of the translation, I really did not like the writing style. It felt so dry and so matter of fact. And I decided not to waste any time since I had so many books on my TBR. And the book that I finished was a true crime book, which was called Malaysian Murder and Mysteries by Vangadesan and Andrew Sagayam. I also read this book for the Golden Girl Reading Challenge for the prompt of reading a true crime book. I listened to this as an audiobook. It was actually a good decision for me. Some of the cases were interesting, and I also learned many things about the Malaysian history since it started from murders that happened in the colonial times about 100 years ago. On the other hand, because there were so many of them stated back to back, I really could not feel invested enough to get any reaction from me. The mystery that interested me the most was the story of the missing flight belonging to Malaysian Airlines, which got lost in 2014 when flying through the Indian Ocean. That was because I watched a documentary about that event. So I thought if I had known more about these murders and mysteries, maybe I would have liked this non-fiction book much more. I gave Malaysian Murders and Mysteries a 6 out of 10. Today is the 10th of August and I finished the book that I was body reading with Nikki at Red Dot Reads Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This was the first James Baldwin book that I read. And in this book we follow David, who's an American living in Paris. Although he had a sexual experience with a boy in his past and still finds men quite attractive, he is also engaged to a quite young American girl, also living in Paris. And when David's fiancée leaves for Spain to gather her thoughts if she wants to marry David or not, David finds himself associated with a older gay man, Jacques, and through him he meets Giovanni, an Italian bartender working in a club that Jacques frequently goes. David and Giovanni feels an instant attraction towards each other, and they start to live together in Giovanni's room. I really found this book quite impressive. I adored the descriptions of Paris. The author clearly loved living there, and I felt like I was walking with the characters in the streets of Paris. And I thought the writing style of Baldwin was quite literary, but not too flowery, which is always a plus for me. It was quite a trip to be in the mind of David, because the story is told from David's point of view. And I felt so many emotions towards him. I pitied him. I found him very annoying, and at some parts I literally hated him. I think the theme of the book is to be at peace with yourself, and when you do not accept what you are, how you feel, and your identity may ruin your life, as well as the lives of people that you actually do love. I have to admit, this book is a very sad book, and I sometimes felt like I need to put this book down and read a very light book to get over this feeling of doom and gloom while reading the book. So I think this is a content warning for this book as well. Last but of course not least, I've enjoyed but reading this book with Nikki, like I always do with our buddy reads. It was great to exchange our views, which were similar most of the time, but different in some parts. So overall, I thought Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin was really a good book, and I gave it an 8 out of 10. Today is the 12th of August, and I finished the book that I was reading for the second week of Garbaugust, for the prompt of A Paperback from Hell. And I read the scanning of a paperback which literally had Hell on its title, Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. This book was also adapted into a movie and then a movie series called Hellraiser. In this horror book, we follow a man named Frank being obsessed with a puzzle box because he would have a experience with centipedes who have a sense of pleasure like Frank does. When he opens the box, he becomes in an unending state of pleasure, which is actually kind of like a torture. After that event, Frank's brother moves into a home with his wife, and the wife discovers that Frank, her brother-in-law, and her ex-lover is trapped in this house, and she does everything she can to rescue him. First of all, I really did admire the way that Clive Barker wrote this novel, because it was really a page-turner, and I read it I think in 2 days, and considering I'm not a big fan of horror genre, this was a very big achievement. I also found the plot structure very solid. I really liked the tempo, and I was really curious how it would end, because I hadn't seen the movie. Although it didn't have a very deep character analysis, it was interesting to see how obsession of any kind can ruin somebody's life. So this was actually a pleasant read for me, and I gave Hellbound Hound by Clive Barker a 7 out of 10. Today is the 14th of August, and yesterday evening I finished the book that I was reading for the Killer Reads book club hosted by AJ Dunn Reads and Writes. This month's book was Double Indemnity by James M. Cain. In this very short crime noir novel, we follow an insurance guy who one day decides to visit a client for a renewal of insurance, and then meets the wife of that client. He is slowly persuaded by the wife to make sure that the husband has a railroad accident, so that the wife would get double indemnity from the insurance. However, the involvement of the daughter and her lover complicates things. This was another very fast read for me, and the reading experience was one of the best reading experience that I've had of a very short work. The writing was very engaging. The characters were as complex as they should be in such a short story, and the tempo never decreased. I really liked how the psychological factors affected the outcome of the book. However, speaking of outcome, I have to say I really did not like the ending of the book. Actually, that is why I decreased the rating by 1 point, and I gave Double Indemnity by James M. Cain an 8 out of 10. So those were the 6 works that I finished, and 1 work that I DNF'd in the first half of August. Please comment down below, have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video? And if you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, I'm going to choose double. Double means çifte in Turkish, and çifte is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.